You know what really makes us mad? Is wasting money on CDs with only one or two good songs.
Yeah. Tell them about punk.
What's up, posers? Welcome to Punklottopod. I'm your co-host, Justin Hensley.
I'm your other co-host, Dylan Hensley.
And this is the show where we assign a year and choose one punk, hardcore, emo, or punk-adjacent album from that year to discuss. Before we get to that, though, this is probably the last week. Yeah, we'll say this is the last week to join the Patreon at the $1 tier and get entered for a drawing for the free $10 tier. So, as of this, you may only have like 2 days to sign up. I'm not really going to push people to sign up just for 2 days worth, because you're going to turn around and get charged again on Friday if you do sign up today. So I'm not really going to push too hard for that. So if you sign up, you get entered for the drawing. Maybe I'll refund you. Yeah, I can do that. I could refund you the June charge and you get to keep it. I don't know. Whatever. Message me if you want to enter. Venmo me $1 and you're entered automatically. But over on the Patreon this week, we are going to do a chart dive on the year 1983, which is the year we're talking about today. And that dollar also gets you access to all of the weekly bonus audio. I looked at the RSS feed in the podcasting app, and we've done 86 episodes of Patreon. That includes the new release Friday audio that I do every week, which I think is up to 18 of those now. So you get a lot. You get access to exclusive posts. You get Moon Pies for Misfits, where I try snacks and drinks and film my reaction to them. I got 2 recorded that I need to post. Those have been fun. I think this week, the one I just tried was the new Mountain Dew Baja Gold, which is like a pineapple one. So I'll be posting that probably this upcoming week.
Mountain Dew is really just taking Mexican sodas and putting them in Mountain Dew bottles now at this point, right?
Well, whatever Baja Blast is, I've never figured out what that flavor is supposed to be.
Oh, Baja Blast is just blue Powerade.
Oh yeah, didn't they say it's just it's Mountain Dew and blue Powerade? Well, I have some blue Powerade right now. I could make my own zero sugar Baja Blast. So that'll be the next Moon Pies for Misfits homemade Baja Blast.
Homebrew sodas. What's the Simpsons joke? You want to take some homemade Pepsi?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a little really thick.
Also a good Mitch Hedberg has a good one too. You want some homemade Sprite? Not till you figure out what the fuck else is in it.
They just say Sprite is just lemon and lime. There's got to be more to it than that. The $10 tier that you're entering a raffle to win, though, is where you get to choose what album we talk about on the show. So it could really be anything. I'd say keep it in the punk realm, but at this point, our definition of punk is so flexible that it could practically be anything.
Yeah, I think anyone who's going to subscribe to our show is probably going to assign us something at least alternative.
Yeah.
I don't expect anyone to go way outside of the rock genres.
Yeah.
Maybe hip hop. I feel like that would be something that we could maybe debate. Depends on what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, that really would depend on what it was, but I don't know
how relevant it is, but yeah.
We've kind of painted ourselves into a corner with this show by picking a punk and putting punk in the name of our show.
Yeah, but I mean, we don't do a lottery. We never actually did a lottery.
Yeah, even the early version was not a lottery. Sometimes I wonder, is the name of our show a good name or a bad name?
Well, I saw someone tweet something recently, all band names are bad.
Yeah.
I think that can be extended to podcasts. Are there good podcast names? I mean, it's always excluding ones that are just the name of the thing that they're talking about, podcast, or
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
the AMC post-show naming convention of talking blah, blah, blah.
Or even the ones that are just like NPR, all things considered, like the podcast version.
Yeah.
The Daily. Yeah.
It is the Daily. Barbaro?
Yeah.
Yeah. Barbaro.
Yeah. Sometimes I wonder. It's one of those things where like you've heard it so like you say it and hear it so much that it has no meaning to you anymore. So you're just like when you're telling somebody for the first time, you don't even know if it's a good or a bad name. But yeah.
Yeah, ours does need explaining though,
Yeah.
which probably means it's a bad one.
Yeah.
You tell people the name of your podcast and then you have to go into like how we used to do the show and how we don't do it that way anymore, and the whole conversation we've had for the last few minutes.
Yeah. But yeah,
But it's fine.
all of that.
We're stuck with it.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
Our branding. We'd have to start over from scratch.
It's like any classic bad band name.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a joke, and now we're stuck with it.
Yep. So all of that you can get over on the Patreon. That's patreon.com/punklottopod. We're on all forms of social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook @punklottopod. We have an email address. It's punklottopod@gmail.com. A voicemail, which is 202-688-PUNK. You can leave us a message. And the Substack, punklottopod.substack.com. I think that's all the plugs. We can get into the show. So, whenever it came to deciding what year to talk about for this week's episode, it was pretty easy because I'd already figured out what year we haven't done in the longest amount of time, because I offered it to you last week and you said, no, that's one of my years for your calendar project.
Yeah, but we're doing it anyway, so.
But I'm picking this time. So the last time we did the year 1983 was way back in, spring of 2020. It was with Elise Okasami of Oceanator.
Oh, wow.
That was the last time we did 83. So I was like, yeah, I think we're due. Also, as a side note, we've mentioned on here before that people don't care about years in the 2010s, and the Roswell Kid episode was proof of that, because it underperformed every other episode we'd done in the last month. So
Nobody wants to talk about recent stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Not that recent.
Yep, it didn't do as well as I'd hoped, but yeah, 83 we have done. Let's see, we've done 83 3 times, and the first one was on Husker Du and SSD Control with our good friend John Russell of Gnawing.
The infamous episode.
Yeah. Everything Falls Apart by Husker Du, the very first Husker Du record. And Get It Away, the SSD Control EP that got us...
got in trouble for.
That got us in hot water with the Burrill family.
So funny.
And then the next one we did was 45 Grave and the Birthday Party with Expert Timing, Jeff and Katrina of Expert Timing.
We need to have them back.
Yeah.
To make up for making them listen to those new records.
Yeah.
Because that was classic format.
Yeah.
They did not have very much choice.
Yeah, I remember Katrina said she chose the 45 Grave record because out of the 5 episodes we had pre-selected, it was the only one with a woman singing in the band. So, yeah, that's how we wound up with that one. And then, like I said, Elise Okasami, we talked about X's More Fun in the New World. So yeah, it's been a while. That was that was July 15th of 2020 that episode went up, so in the summer.
Yeah, very, very close to 2 years.
Yeah, actually, very close.
Less than a month away.
So explain, and for those who are unfamiliar, what is this calendar thing you do?
Okay. I've tried to summarize it as efficiently as possible. The best way that I can explain this is basically I just have to say you understand how a calendar works, right? Mm-hmm. You can reuse calendars. You're familiar with that concept.
Yeah.
So the idea to me was, well, there are years that you can reuse a calendar from. And because of the way that I've explored music in the last I mean, doing this show is very much in line with that as far as like looking back at specific years and time periods and that deep diving that we tend to do on the show, the chart diving and stuff like that. So that's kind of been modified in a few different times in my own listening exploration. So I don't know why exactly the idea of the calendar occurred to me, reusing a calendar, but it did. And so I was like, well, that's an interesting way to look at it. What years correspond with the current year? Like, which calendars can you reuse? The first year that I did that was like, it was a leap year, so there were not very many options. It was like 64 and like 92 or something like that were of interest to me. But this last year and this year have had like kind of a year from each decade. So currently I'm looking at 66, occasionally 55, 77, 83, 94, 2005, and 2011. And basically just like compiling playlists of things to listen to that correspond with the current month of those years. For no other reason than I just think it's interesting. I don't know. I come across things that I wouldn't have otherwise. Things that would be easy to miss because they're just buried and obscure. But when you have those limitations and those constraints, you find interesting things. And sometimes it also kind of like, it makes me listen to things that I maybe have been prejudiced against. Maybe prejudice is a strong word, but things that I thought like, I'm not interested in that, or I don't like that band. Kind of relevant to the episode that we're doing today. And so that in a way has kind of forced me to kind of reevaluate or reconfirm my opinions on certain bands and genres and things like that. But I don't know. It's fun for me. Hopefully that's a succinct explanation of what it is.
Yeah, so when I gave you 83 last week, you're like, no, I don't want to talk about that because I'm going to be talking about stuff from that year all year long on the Patreon. So in our I'm listening section. So I was like, okay, we'll save that for later. And then it was my turn and I was like, okay, we're doing that year now. So, 1983, this is the year of Power, Corruption, and Lies by New Order. Absolutely amazing record. Do you have a favorite New Order record?
That one is my favorite, and that's the one I'm most familiar with. I've listened to a lot of their records, though.
Yeah.
That's the one I've come back to the most, though.
Yeah, I think the first 5 are the ones I've listened to. I don't know that I've listened to anything past the 80s. I know they have a lot more material. And they get different. They change their style quite a bit, right? Like, they definitely get more dancey in the 90s and 2000s. Or just have one in 90s, 93 Republic. The rest are in the 2000s.
Yeah, I think with each record, I think they got more and more dancey, with Republic being pretty much just a dance record. But Waiting for the Sirens Call for 2005 is a little bit more of an indie rock record, kind of a departure for them.
When did Peter Hook leave the band? 2007.
Yeah.
So, and then Peter Hook, what does he do? Like, he does Peter Hook and the Light. Is that the name of that band? Yeah, Peter Hook and the Light. Has he released anything under that, or is that just a touring name?
I think it's just the band that he tours with and plays New Order songs.
Yeah, because it's one of those deals where, yeah, they only have live records. Oh, so it's a combination of Joy Division and New Order stuff, because he's got like performing Unknown Pleasures, Power, Corruption, and Lies. So yeah, he's just doing the hits. My guess is, I wonder if he just was like, I'm tired of writing new stuff. Let me coast.
Yeah, I mean, there's been internal struggle in that band for years, I think.
Yeah. There's probably creative differences, too, being the main. Maybe he doesn't want to make dance music anymore. I don't know. 1983 is also the year of Speaking in Tongues by the Talking Heads. We actually just last week talked about more songs about buildings and food. This is them returning to pop sensibilities after Remain in Light with Brian Eno. And, this is the one with Burning Down the House. This Must Be the Place. Is Girlfriend Is Better? Is that a single?
It might have been. I mean, I'm pretty sure they play it in Stop Making Sense.
Yeah.
Actually, it might even be the song where the line Stop Making Sense comes from.
That might make sense. Let's see. According to Rate Your Music, they did, Swamp and Slippery People as a single. Weird. Burning Down the House and I Get Wild. This Must Be the Place with Moon Rocks. And then there's the Once in a Lifetime, This Must Be the Place. Stop Making Sense. Yeah, Stop Making Sense, Girlfriend is Better was another single later too. So yeah, that makes sense. It's the return to pop stardom though.
This is the one with Bernie Worrell on it, making weird keyboard noises. A great weird noises record.
Yeah.
For this being a pop record, it's also full of like wacky sounds.
It's probably one of their most new wave records too. Even though they their sound kind of is one of the inventors of new wave, but it becomes the record where you have all your new wave hits from. This is also the year of REM's first record, Murmur.
Murmur.
Was there a single off of Murmur? Off of Nermal? Radio Free Europe.
Radio Free Europe is the one that you know from this record. This is a good record. I have listened to it before, but revisited it this year and really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Definitely reaching the point where I'm going to devote more energy to exploring the REM catalog.
So you're going to turn into...
Not like actively. I wasn't like, I must listen to every record now.
You're going to turn into Adam Scott now. And... Stay. One of my favorite jokes on that show. Random tangent. Parks and Rec. A lot of shitty dudes came out of that show, or involved in that show, but he's the kind of the evergreen. As far as we know, he's not been said some shitty stuff.
Well, Rob Lowe was shitty before the show.
Yeah, that's true.
Actually, he's actually a better person.
He's improved. Yeah,
he's actually one of the better ones. Because he's actually that character in real life now. He's just super, super nice. And
he's had to do some atoning.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then the other guys and Chris Pratt just being real weird. Real Republican.
Yeah. Chris Pratt's just you're not canceled, but you almost are.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wish you kind of wish you were. So you go away.
He's like this, you just don't like him. And he's just I don't know.
It really rubs you the wrong way.
Yeah, some of his decisions and talking points is just all right, man, whatever. But, I don't know. Sorry. Random Parks and Rec tangent for all you rec heads out there. Different record, of course, but excellent. The Violent Femmes self-titled debut album. This is where the legendary Blister in the Sun comes from, as well as, let's see, Gone Daddy Gone is off this record. Please Do Not Go is off of here. And really, their whole record is really good.
Yeah, a career built on this one record.
Yeah.
All of the songs that you know are from this one.
Pretty much. I do think Hallowed Ground has one other single that's recognizable. Maybe not. Maybe it's The Blind Leading the Naked. Nope, it is not. So I don't know what I'm thinking. Just the fact that the famous version of Blister in the Sun is a re-recorded version. The one that got all the 90s alternative rock radio play. Let's see, where did it come off of? Because it's called Blister in the Sun 2000 or something like that. It must have been on a soundtrack or something.
Maybe. Yeah, that would sound about right.
It got a re-recording or reissue sometime in the 90s. I don't know. Love that record though.
Yeah, that one was that. It's got to be a re-recorded version because it doesn't make sense for a 1983 song to be played literally hourly on alt rock stations throughout the entire 90s.
And to make them a name enough that they would be guest stars on Sabrina the Teenage Witch in 96 or 7.
Yeah.
Because I remember, like, in watching that episode, like, I didn't know who they were at all. I'd never seen them before. And then, like, I see them and I'm like, this is the band that these teens are interested in seeing? These guys probably in their mid to late 40s by that point. Another incredible record that came out that year, The Hurting by Tears for Fears. That's the one. I mean, though there's good stuff on the next record, but this is the one that's got Mad World. And I think there's another, is it Memories Fade? I think is a single. The whole album is good though. Like, it's one of those records that you're like, oh, Tears for Fears, one hit wonder, or just like, or a band that's just known for their singles. I guess Songs from the Big Chair has some other big songs too. But I think, I don't know, compared The Hurting to Songs from the Big Chair as an album, I think I like The Hurting better. Like, the deep cuts I like better than the deep cuts on Songs from the Big Chair, but I'd need to do like a side-by-side comparison to really pick that out.
For some reason, I skipped this one. Came out in March. I'm sure I put it on my playlist, and then it just, for whatever reason, I never landed on it. It is going on my missed playlist, though. Because that's definitely one I would be interested in. That's one that I wish I had listened to in preparation for this episode, because I feel like it would be pretty relevant to the record that we're talking about.
Yeah, I could see that being of note, because like there's other like more punk rock stuff that came out in '83 too, like the self-titled Suicidal Tendencies and Wipers Over the Edge and Earth AD by the Misfits. Like, there's your, like, we're getting real punk. Rock for Light, What Makes a Man Start Fires. Like, this is some really great stuff in '83.
Yeah, you're more hardcore stuff. You're more American punk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because really the UK had like fully shifted into new wave by this point. I mean,
everything is like go-betweens and
the Chameleons and
Sad Lovers and Giants.
Echo and the Bunnymen put out Porcupine. It is funny how different like each side of the Atlantic was doing their music. I mean, with the exception of Talking Heads, most of the new wave stuff was British.
Well, yeah. I mean, there were the occasional American weirdos. I mean, Alan Vega's still putting out stuff, and there's a Pylon record. They were more dance punk, kind of weird art kids.
But we've got Mommy's Little Monsters by, Social D, and yeah, '83 it's like all the '80s though. Like, it's a top heavy, and then like once you dig below, you're like, what is this? Ugh. Is there anything you found deep diving that you're like, wow, surprisingly good?
Let me see. I can edit this chart really quickly and see if there was anything
that you've rated already.
Yeah.
Because really, if we're going like a little deeper, you get like, there's a Verbal Abuse record and there's a Scream record. Like, you're getting into some hardcore stuff.
That Scream record is really good. That is a really underrated record. January '83. Really, to me, sounds like Embrace and Dag.
Yeah.
Before Embrace and Dag. So really, really early, a predecessor to Revolution Summer. Highly recommend Scream. We talked about that Play Dead record.
Oh yeah, I forgot to actually, because that was under one of the Halloween episodes, so it didn't show up whenever I sorted it by year, because we didn't do an assigned year for those. But yeah, that Play Dead record's surprisingly good.
Yeah, I haven't hit anything too obscure on the punk charts that really jumped out at me. Seance by the Church is not like a beloved church record, but it's a really good one. But it's kind of like right in between some big church records. So it's not like that under the radar or anything. Yeah, like that DYS record, Brotherhood, that's probably an under the radar album, because that's where Dave Smalley came from, and I love that album cover. I think it's well regarded, but it's not as well known as his Dag Nasty and All records.
Have you ever listened to 10,000 Maniacs? Because they have a lot of records, and I don't think I've ever listened to any of them.
10,000 Maniacs is
Natalie Merchant,
right?
Yeah.
They do a version of Because the Night, the Patti Smith Springsteen song that I've heard before, but otherwise I've never really listened to them.
This is when you look at did Natalie Merchant leave 10,000 Maniacs and they continued without her?
I have no idea. It's a possibility.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Natalie Merchant left. She was from 81 to 93. And then Mary Ramsey is listed as lead vocals from 93 to 2001. And then 2006 to present. And then Oscar Seville has lead vocals from 2002 to 2007. That's weird. That band. They lasted a long time, but that'd be a band to dive on because I have zero knowledge about any of their music. I know that like there were singles by 2000 Maniacs, but I don't know what they are.
There's something that you've heard 1,000 times before, and you're just like, you have no idea who it is.
Yeah.
That you'll see it someday and you're like, that's 10,000 Maniacs? What?
Yeah. What's Natalie Merchant's big single?
See, that's the thing. I don't know that either. My reference for Natalie Merchant is the Natalie Merchant laser show, Zach Galifianakis joke.
Yeah. I bet if we were like, oh, that's Natalie Merchant? Oh, that George Clooney? Well, I think we stalled enough talking about 1983 and going down rabbit holes. And overall, interesting year. Very new wave heavy, very post-punk heavy, very American hardcore heavy.
Yeah, the thing about the early 80s, and I've noticed this looking at other charts in the past on this show and in some of my exploring of different decades and different years, the early 80s, like 1980, I feel like there's a sudden splintering, especially of punk, into a lot of significant subgenres. But then for the next couple of years, it's really only those things, and they're very uniform. The subgenres themselves are very homogenized, like most of the UK, post-punk stuff, most of the UK new wave stuff. I mean, there are kind of your individual outliers, and I think a lot of what makes the bands and the records from those years significant are like the unique details, like the singer's voice, or like if their guitarist has like something really specific that they do. But otherwise, it's very much the same, like disco beat, 4 on the floor, driving bass line, chorus effects, stock keyboard sounds. And you could kind of take that same rubber stamp mentality and apply it to like hardcore, and even the more like rock, even the more like what few bands like X and Wipers are still doing, rockabilly riffs.
Yeah.
In punk. I mean, they have their unique qualities that I love, but it was still very much in like the same lane. And you could branch that out to like 45 Grave, and so there's not a huge wide variety of different sounds. You kind of just have these tent poles, and everyone stays pretty close to them.
I would say that the record we're talking about today may be one of the records that like does have its own unique sound and feel to it compared to a lot of their contemporaries.
Yeah, I think that's a good segue. We should probably talk about that record.
Yeah. So we have 1983 to look at, and I selected War by U2.
broken bottles on the children's feet. Bodies strewn across the dead streets. But I won't heed the battle call. It puts my back up against the wall. Sunday, bloody Sunday. Sunday, bloody Sunday. Sunday, bloody Sunday. All right, stop!
Got a couple stats here. U2 formed in Dublin, Ireland in 1976. This was released February 28th, 1983. This is the band's third full-length album, following October and Boy preceding that. The person on this album is Bono on vocals and guitar, The Edge on guitar and piano, Adam Clayton on bass, and Larry Mullen Jr. on drums.
I should know this. I wish that I had looked this up before, but it just occurred to me the U2 lineup has always been the same, right?
Yeah, I think so. Like, if anyone left the band, it's like probably in the last 10 years. But I don't think that's even happened. I think they're consistent, like, I think they've added people.
Yeah, I mean they've definitely brought in like auxiliary.
I can
Oh
double.
yeah, it is Larry, Adam, The Edge, and Bono. It really is just those four guys. And they had previous members way at the beginning of the band, but
Yeah.
not on any of the records.
That's wild. That's great. I love too that this band has a Bono and The Edge and a Larry.
Yeah.
I'm
See,
Larry.
That's the thing is you have these one word or like nickname front figures of this band. You would think that there would be these like massive egos that would have caused some like internal struggle and splintered the band, and it would just end up being, The Edge's U2, The Edge's Joshua Tree experience, or Bono and U2.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Adam and Larry have their own U2 cover band.
Yeah, they only do the first 3 records. I know it's the same. It's the same members. It's been the same 4 people.
They have a very consistent. They never really stopped either. They're one of those bands that just like they started and never stopped. Like they are still active. They didn't have a hiatus, or if they did have a hiatus, it was probably just a like, hey, can we not tour for the entire year?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, they definitely had significant slow periods in their career later on when they didn't need to tour and they didn't need to put out records constantly. But
Yeah.
no, they never were like, oh, we broke up. Oh, we're going on hiatus. It was, we're not touring this year, but we'll tour next year or 2 years from now.
Do they have like any periods where people were like, ugh, gross, you too? Is it now? Is now that time period?
It's now. Yeah, definitely. It's
they keep putting out records.
I don't think that anything that they have released since their 2000 record has been well regarded.
Yeah, and even that album's like not in their top 5 or any either. Like Zooropa's more well regarded. Pop is not considered very good, but they had some singles though. Like they were kind of a presence still. How to Dismantle Atomic Bomb has the one where he counts 1, 2, 3, 15. And they were getting like TV performances and all this stuff, and then they forced everybody to have their record for free on their iPhones, but then any car that has Bluetooth will automatically start playing the first track on that U2 record because it's alphabetical or something like that.
Yeah, that's
It's funny, they were like, we want people to have this for free, which was a fun idea, but everybody's like, but I don't want it.
well, yeah. I mean, the idea was respectable to say like, we don't care, we don't need to sell this record.
Yeah,
we want people to have it.
I think it was
It was the execution. It was the execution of Apple being like, well, we're just going to install it on everyone's phones.
Yeah,
and make it undeletable.
That's not U2's fault. That's Apple's fault.
100% Apple did that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're like, what if we just airdropped it to everyone who has an iPhone? What? No. They were trying to do their version of In Rainbows, their free Radiohead record.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah. I'm sure the label and Apple came up with that whole gimmick, but yeah. So before we get too deep on like YouTube,
the band as an entity.
yeah. The record was produced by Steve Lillywhite, and this was the third time working with him. Apparently, Steve Lillywhite had a rule of never working with a band more than twice, but he decided to, why not do a third one with U2? And it's like probably a good idea he did, because it wound up being a pretty good thing. At this point, he had already worked with Susie and the Banshees, XTC, Peter Gabriel, the Psychedelic Furs, and the same year this record came out, he produced Big Country's The Crossing. So he had a pretty good year in 83. And then he probably just got bigger and bigger work going forward. I didn't dig too far past that, but you work with U2,
Yeah.
and they get huge, and you're going to be like, get me the guy who did New Year's Day, you know? So the record also features some additional instruments on here. You were going to say something?
No, go ahead.
Okay. We have some additional instruments on here. We have Kenny Fradley on trumpet and Steve Wickham on violin. And Steve Wickham was in the band The Waterboys. So coming full circle on that band I talked about a couple weeks ago. He famously, the story goes, he just approached the Edge on the street in Ireland and was like, hey, do you need a violin player? And he was like, sure. And they brought him in the studio. He would later go and play on a couple albums by Sinead O'Connor, so keeping it pretty big. But I think these are my all my notes on the back side of things. So
The fact that he's from the Waterboys makes that story make a little bit more sense.
well, the
They're
Waterboys
kind of contemporaries, right?
well, not this early though. Waterboys
No.
are later. So Waterboys probably become a thing because he was on this record.
Well, the Waterboys have a record in '83.
Do they?
I thought I saw them on the chart. Unless I'm thinking of Big Country
You're thinking, yeah, the other Irish band.
with the same producer. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, you're right though. 83, the Waterboys, self-titled record.
Yep.
So there you go.
You know, yeah. A band described as Art Van Morrison Part U2.
Interesting. They have a ton of members. Also from Dublin. Well, they're originally from London, but moved to Dublin. They're probably all Irish and were just met in London when they started the band. Like, why are we still here? Let's go back to Ireland. Okay, so usually I ask what made you choose this album, so I'll kind of explain what my thought process on selecting it. Looking at the year, I was like, well, I could just choose like a record from one of my favorite bands ever, which is always fun to talk about, but like, I don't know. I kind of wanted to challenge myself. I kind of wanted to do something outside of my comfort zone. I also feel like conversationally, it's harder to talk about a record that you just love versus a record that you didn't know as much about.
Yeah. Unless you come across something you didn't already know in researching, you know, the record, you a lot of times fall back on, well, I love this song.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, which I actually was torn between three. I sent you a picture of three.
You sent me a couple records, yeah.
I think I sent this one, and I sent the Big Country record, and maybe, was it Tears for Fears? Was that the third one I sent? It was, oh, no, it was Gang of Four's Hard. I just didn't know that record at all.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, that Big Country record's probably fun. And I did actually listen to it this week, and I was like, hey, it's pretty good. I think I made the right call by going with the U2 album, because you wanna go down the U2 what U2 means to you?
Yeah, it's probably a good tangent. I kind of pushed this one too. I was like, you know, that's a significant record on my calendar that I skipped because I wasn't feeling it because of preconceptions about U2, I guess, is the way that I'll describe it. So why don't you go into what U2 means to you prior
sure.
doing this?
Yeah. So, okay. So I went like way far back. U2 were one of those bands that was like ever present as I was growing up. So like, U2 predates me being alive. So they've literally always existed, which is, if you really think about it, is kind of comforting to know that something like this has existed your entire life, which means if U2 ever breaks up or like a member passes away, God forbid, in years and years in the future, then it would be like, oh, this era is over. But so U2 was always present. Like I and when I started paying attention to music, I'd heard all the singles in that point. I remember, let's see, our local alternative radio station, 106.5 The End, was they played U2 all the time. It's just one of those bands that they played, because they would play, it was an alternative rock station, and a majority of what they played was like 90s alternative, grunge and beyond. But they also would dip into a lot of the more, they would go into the 80s, but they would take the more like your REMs or your Talking Heads, or like the
they would play the more college rock, alt rock, early alt rock kind of stuff.
I guess it would have been called the modern rock. What would have been on the modern rock charts in the 80s before it was turned into the alternative chart.
Yeah, just not the stuff that was hair metal, because that was being played on the classic rock station, or the hair metal station.
Which I think is very funny that the classic rock stations were playing stuff that was like 10 years old and calling it classic rock. But so yeah, that I lived off of that radio station for a very long period of my childhood. Like, I feel like the radio was always on in our room from like starting in like the second grade or something like that. But I do remember in the third grade, that was probably the year that I kind of started paying attention to what was being played. So like there were songs that I was listening to, but I wasn't like paying attention to names or who they were or who does what song, really. Except for in the third grade, I remember I was talking about music with a kid in my class. His name was Thomas, and his family ran a farm. And I think we were talking about music one day randomly. Cause we weren't friends, but we didn't dislike each other. It was just more of a like, hey, we're in the same class and have been since like first grade. And we actually had a conversation, and then he was like, I like Smashing Pumpkins. And I was like, me too. Not even knowing if I did or not. And then I remember going home and like listening to the radio and like making a note of every name that they said on the station whenever the DJ would come on and be like, and that was Soundgarden. And I do remember, because they wouldn't always do that. You just were expected to know who sang what. I remember paying extra close attention one day and then coming back to school the next day and be like, hey, do you know that band Tonic? And it was just because I'd heard them say, and that was Tonic. The day before. It's like, I like that song, and that big Tonic song. So I guess that's to say that's the beginning of me paying attention to like names and artists on the radio. So continuing up through the rest of my childhood and into my teens, I just heard U2 all the time. They were literally playing them all the time.
Yeah,
you would
they
hear
really did
every day
them
multiple
constantly. Songs
by them a day you would hear. And it wasn't until the 2000 album, All That You Can't Leave Behind, came out that that's where my dislike of U2 started, because they played the shit out of those singles off that album. And I think that also corresponded with like the album came out in 2000, but like they played singles off of that record for like the next 2 years. I think 9/11 was a big part of it, and like U2 being a religious quote unquote band, it got them more play. It's kind of like how POD got really big in late 2001 because they were a religious band. And so I didn't really like those songs off that album. And then they were playing them so much, and I just got so tired of hearing U2
Beautiful
songs.
Day.
Yeah, Beautiful Day especially.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so it turned into me disliking U2 anytime they came on. So in my later teen years, I would say U2's one of the worst bands ever, or like one of those shitty teen edgy comments. And going to college, I began to encounter the whole slew of Christian dudes who love U2. which is a thing if you did not know.
Yeah. I don't think that our average listener understands. I mean, if you're aware of U2, you're aware of the fact that Bono is like an outspoken Catholic. He's, religion is a very common theme in their lyrics from the beginning of the band. Like, it really goes way back. So everyone knows that, but I don't think people realize the way in which U2 single-handedly shaped the sound of modern rock Christian worship music.
Yeah, they really did.
From the like 99 to now.
All is quiet on New Year's Day. A world in wild is underway. I want to be with you night and day. Nothing changes on New Year's Day. On New Year's Day, I will be with you again. I will be with you again.
The Edge's signature delay sound.
Yeah.
To this day, I recognized like the novelty of it and why it was so groundbreaking and so why it became his signature sound, because like there's not a lot of it in the 80s. I mean, there certainly was some of it, but the way he used it was really, really particular and it really stands out. But I've heard it so much that I can't stand it.
Yeah, like worship music just stole liberally from U2. But also didn't have the hooks too. But like, so like the Christian guys would always be like the toxic masculinity Christian guys too. Like that was especially like their band.
Oh, yeah.
Their band.
Yeah.
One, it was because it's like, well, U2's actually a super duper famous band and they're Christian. So then we get to be like, I like a very popular, well-regarded band. And my favorite band isn't just like a worship band, So you get to have that. It was a thing to be like, I only listen to Christian music. Thank God U2's a Christian band because it means I get to listen to them because they're humongous.
I get to listen to this band that everyone knows and
Yeah.
then be like, and then have that talking point. Ugh.
Yeah. So that also added to that, like, U2. And so since I stopped listening to the radio and since I stopped hanging out with Christians, it's funny to think of it that way, but I don't go to church anymore, so I haven't really had to listen to U2 very much. And I'd probably say in the last like 10 years, like anytime they've come on, I've been like, I don't know why I hated them so much.
Some time goes by and you hear it and you're like, I don't hate that.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think I boiled it down to, I think I was just tired of the overplay. Because
Exposure was a huge impact on why that band didn't become a band for me.
yeah. Overplay really hurt a lot of bands, especially if they existed and were played on alternative rock throughout the 90s. Like, there was a period where I was like, I hate Stone Temple Pilots. I hate Metallica. I hate, like, Pearl Jam. And then now I hear these songs and I go, I don't hate that. I like that one. You know, like that's how I feel now. Like I've softened. And it's because I'm not hearing Metallica every single day, 2 to 5 times a day. You know? So I think Overplay was what I hated more than anything.
Yeah, I remember Beautiful Day specifically as a song, being really the song where I became aware of U2. I would have been 10. Yeah.
Yep.
I distinctly remember watching the music video
With the airplanes.
at our cousin's house.
Yeah.
And being like, I kind of like this. And I think having like, oh, let me file this in my brain as being like a band that maybe I'll pay attention to. Maybe I'll buy their CD. Like I could get into this. And then just hearing that and then just continuing to hear that song on the radio for the next several months. And like just never having enough money to buy the CD or never having like enough interest to make that commitment that it didn't become that band, because it was just like, well, I don't need to hear that anymore. And then I think kind of like absorbed your disdain for them,
which I didn't know.
I think probably shortly after being like, oh, I'm interested in this band, you were probably like, I hate you too. I was like, yeah, me too.
Yeah.
But then I had the same like evangelical college guys loving you too.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I don't want anything to do with anything you're into.
Yeah. So all of that long-winded story to say, I kind of like this record.
I didn't love it, but I enjoyed parts of it.
It's not a 5-star, no. It's not even really like I'd put it at like a 3.75, maybe. Mainly because there's just some weak spots on the record. Yeah. So yeah, listening to it, I was like, hey, these songs are pretty good. Like, and I was like, well, the record, okay, it immediately starts off with Sunday, Bloody Sunday. Sunday, Blundy Sunday. That was also one of the U2 songs that I was like, I do like that song. Just because it was like kind of hard and kind of darker than a lot of their other stuff. This album as a whole is revered as like a darker, harsher sounding album compared to the rest of their discography.
It was a significant enough departure in their discography that I think lends to its success. I think is due in part to the producer who, you know, having his rule of not working with the same band more than twice is informative. I didn't realize that going into this record, but it does make sense where he's like, okay, we're gonna mix things up, which he did. I did read that he told the drummer,
yeah,
he was like, I gotta insist that you use a click track.
Yeah,
and he didn't want to do it, but he gave into it, and it's such an important part of the sound of the record is how tight those drums are, and especially with it starting the record off with that drum beat on Sunday Bloody Sunday, that like martial military
the military march beat, like
having that tight drumming on that simple beat is like it jumps out. I mean, and the way it's mixed is a really important part of it. It is like really up front. I think they recorded those drums. I think they recorded that drum sound in the bottom of a stairwell, like a spiral staircase or something. So, I mean, they made a lot of choices on the drums in particular that are really significant to the sound of the record. That are a unique change, but there are other ones. The Edge doesn't use his delay quite as much. It's a little dirtier, more straightforward guitar sound. Yeah,
and he like the Edge he'd had like a writer's block in like between October and this one, and he just like was having a hard time coming up with new stuff. And I think Sunday Bloody Sunday was the one that like broke the writer's block for him. Which what a song to break your writer's block with. Like it is one of the standout tracks of this record and of their discography as a whole. And throwing in that other thing that they changed and twisted and they did differently is like this is their, I don't know if it's their most political record to date, but up to this point it was the most political. Like they got really political on this album, and it's addressing a lot of specific things. Like especially Sunday Bloody Sunday is about the Troubles in Ireland, and originally like the lyrics were even a little bit more aggressive and like taking a stance, but they were like, hey, we might get murdered if you keep those lyrics in, so let's just soften them a little bit. Like, it was like the first line was originally like, I don't care about the IRA, or the UDA or something like that, and it was just like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
and but then there's other tracks on here that are political too, about other songs. And
yeah,
so,
New Year's Day was about the what was going on in Poland.
It was about, I have it actually written down in my notes here, about the Polish Solidarity movement.
Yeah.
Which I don't really, I don't know much about that.
I don't know the specific Polish. I do know that, yeah, the early 80s is that time period of.
This is probably Iron Curtain type, Cold War shit. That's probably what it was. But even like the song Seconds is about nuclear proliferation and how we're basically going to blow ourselves up. And those are probably the biggest three like political songs on here. But there are other moments on here that they're more like general social commentary tracks. And so yeah, like they doing something different in a lot of different ways for them. But yeah, like I think it's musically, if you look at all the songs on here, I think how many tracks is on this album? It's only 10 tracks. And the first half of the album, I think is, I wouldn't say perfect, but like pretty great. Like,
yeah, it's really solid.
Yeah.
It is definitely a top heavy record.
Yeah.
There's really not anything on the B-side that jumps out to me.
There's one for me. I really think Two Hearts Beat is one. It's probably the best song on the B-side because it's real post-punky. Like, it's the most post-punk to me.
Yeah.
Song on the album. And I will say, Surrender probably could have been bigger for me, but the song is so long. It's like almost 6 minutes long. And 40 is interesting too because it's just so different. Which I think is funny. They wrote 40 after Adam had left. Like, they were done. Adam's like, all right, guys, see you later. We're done with the record. I'm going to go home now. And they were like, I think the record ends pretty weak. I think it's assuming they were thinking Surrender was not a good one to end the album on. And they were like, all right, let's write a song real quick. And so they wrote a song without Adam.
Yeah.
And
Bono had a funny intro for the song. It was like, we had 10 minutes left and we wrote the song in 10 minutes and we mixed it in 10 minutes and there's another 10 minutes and he's like, that has nothing to do with why it's called 40.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Because it's based on Psalm 40. Like, it's one of like the very explicitly religious tracks on the record. That song though is funny too because they Edge and Adam switch instruments when they play that song. Adam plays the guitar on that one live.
Yeah. It's funny to have this like almost like Brian Eno oblique strategies kind of like, oh, we've got 10 minutes, make up a song. Bono picks up the Bible and just like finds a psalm and is like, I'm just gonna rip off these lyrics. This psalm has lyrics and you have instruments switching and it's kind of an odd song in the record too.
Yeah, it doesn't really sound like the rest of the album, which it's fine as a closing track too. And
it's short.
And what I like about it too is that it is different from the rest of the B-side. Like, it doesn't really sound like the rest of that record. Though the B-side does weird stuff. Like, The Refugee has like this Adamant sort of like big drum sound to it.
And it was produced by someone else too.
Oh, was it?
It was produced by Bill Whelan.
And then Red Light, which is like a song about prostitution, is weird because it's got like horns on it. Like, that song too was like
got the random trumpet part.
Yeah, and like, this doesn't even sound like a U2 song. Like, it felt like a weird Police, B-side, almost,
Yeah, it has the it also has the Kid Creole and the Coconuts as the backing singers on it.
On the B-side, the two standouts are Two Hearts Beat As One and 40 for me. Two Hearts Beat As One was a single too. It was a single it was weird. So the first single on the record is New Year's Day. And then the second single, there were 2 second singles. They put out Sunday Bloody Sunday in most of the world, and then they put Two Hearts Beat As One out as the single in like Germany. And West Berlin or something like that. Like, it was still like divided too. It was weird. I guess they were like, well, we can't put this overtly political song out behind the Iron Curtain. I don't know what the reason behind selecting a different track. There was also another song that was chosen. Let's see. 40 was released as a German promotional single. Like, it wasn't like an official single. It was just like, here you go, Germany. I don't know, maybe they're going to play there and they were trying to like boost the market. I don't know. But yeah, I think the first half is just like fantastic, with maybe the weakest track being Drowning Man, which it's still not bad. Like, it's got a lot of...
No, it's not bad. It's definitely a different song. It's similar to 42 and being closing the A side and closing the B side with the more acoustic, atmospheric, kind of down-tempo-y songs. I think was the right choice. It certainly does make those songs stand out. I think that song in particular is a little bit long for what it is. It doesn't do much to differentiate itself throughout. Yeah.
But I think, like, we talked about Sunday Bloody Sunday, but like New Year's Day is the other like massive song. I think I read something that says like they've played it 600 times live or something like that. Like, it's just like it's been in their live show since it was released.
Yeah, they almost never not play it.
Yeah. And like, it's great. Like, that piano riff that starts. This is a very delay heavy song. I'd say this one probably feels the most typical U2 from this record. But I also, listening to it closer, I was like, listen to that post-punk like riff that goes on in the background of this song. I was surprised at how post-punk this album was.
Yeah, they're not a punk band, but they drew on stuff along very similar lines, and it was really interesting. I listened to this record, and like immediately I was like, oh, whoa, that sounds like Echo and the Bunnymen.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm like, I've never ever thought of U2 and Echo and the Bunnymen as being that comparable, but you have that like those washing delay sounds and that Police rhythm section of just like constant like bass lines and sloshy drums, and then you have Bono doing his like wailing Gregorian kind of vocals, and you're like, oh shit, that's Echo and the Bunnymen. It's Susie even, like,
yeah, which makes sense too, because they were working with the same guy who worked with Susie and XTC, and the earlier stuff probably is also closer to being. I've not listened to Boy or
I actually did listen to Boy today. It's very consistent sounding throughout, and the songs themselves don't stand out to me as much. But it's definitely in the same lane of like that driving early post-punk sound.
I mean, yeah, they're listed as part of that. Like, they formed in 76, so they're considered part of the 77 punk explosion, even though not really having a big impact on that year in particular. I feel like I've heard like a very, very early U2 single, and I was like, oh yeah, that's a punk single. It's a UK punk single. The album title is called War, and it kind of, Bono says that it, he had made a statement that said, war seemed to be the motif of 1982 between the Falklands, the Middle East, and South Africa. So it was, I guess is why he was like, we're going to get political here. Like, we actually have something to really say. And it really did well. Like, New Year's Day is the first single to chart on the Billboard Hot 100.
The record replaced Thriller on the UK charts.
Yeah, for number one. It was number 12, I think, on the US charts, which I'm curious.
It's their first gold record, too.
Yeah. You know, it's got a lot of accolades, too. It's like number 40 on Rolling Stone's 100 Greatest Albums of the 80s. It's number 221 and 223 on the updated list for the 500 Greatest Albums of All Time. Slant Magazine says it's number 94 on the Greatest Albums of the 80s. Like, it did really well for them. It's kind of the one that put them on the map in the United States, too. And the tour they did in support, which was called the War Tour, which is good name. They progressively were playing bigger and bigger venues as the tour went on. Like, they started in clubs, and then they moved into halls, and then they moved into arenas, all off of this album.
Yeah.
Which is wild. Imagine seeing U2 in, like, a club. I wonder where that tour went.
They have such a big sound, even here, even on their first record, that it's really hard to imagine it in such a small space. It really does sound like arena music.
Yeah, like they just feel like an arena band.
The production on this record was really interesting to me because it's not mixed right for what the songs are, or what an 80s arena rock record should sound like in 1983, because the songs are like, they have that hookiness, and Bono has that. He's not like a great singer, but he has that going for it that really works, that for these kinds of songs and the kind of thing, the kind of performance that you expect. But the drums are like trashy sounding. They're mixed really high. They're even kind of panned a little bit. The bass is also really high in the mix, and it's not like 80s bass. It's like post-punk bass.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just driving and loud, and it's almost like a rhythm guitar. And then you have like the actual guitars are extremely distant sounding. Like they don't even, not only do they sound like delayed, but they also sound like they're mic'd from further away. They sound like they're in a room. You don't have the guitars up front. You're getting more of the room sound of the guitars expanding in a large space. And the vocals are like he's going for it, and it's not like he's buried in a way that you can't understand what he's saying, but there's so much room and space in the way that his voice is recorded that is not typical for 80s rock. And not even typical for a lot of punk stuff at this time period. I don't know. There's something about the way this record was recorded and mixed, and their earlier stuff too. And maybe it's just Lily White, and maybe that, you could definitely make some connections to the sounds of XTC and The Furs and Susie. But even those records that I'm familiar with that he did are mixed a little bit more conventionally, with the vocals a little bit more present. So it's definitely something they're doing.
Yeah. It feels a little scrappier, too. Just a little bit more... Yeah, that raw edge to it is definitely there. And in choosing to write a darker sounding record, too, or harsher sounding album, it lends itself to a little lower fi. Like, is this the lowest lo-fi that they get, I mean, I'm sure they had even more raw stuff early, but...
I mean, like I said, I listened to Boy, and, the fidelity is definitely not there, but it's a little bit tighter of a mix. The vocals are a little bit more forward in the mix. The panning is a little more conventional. Mm-hmm. I don't know. The production really, really stood out to me on this record. Mm-hmm. It was definitely a highlight. Something that I was kind of taking some mental notes on. I was like, that's an approach I haven't thought about. Well, especially for vocal treatment.
Yeah.
I was really intrigued by that.
I noticed too, though, like listening to the album versions of the big singles, like they just sounded different to my ears. Like, there was just something different about them. And more than likely, that has more to do with how broadcasting standards apply to audio, and there's like a certain level of compression that like radio signal is required to have. Like, the idea is basically that like you need a consistent sound from song to song on the radio, so you don't blow up people's speakers in their cars and, you know, radios at home, because like, oh, this one was mixed way louder than that one. So like,
Yeah.
you just have a standard across the board. So hearing those songs via radio or like television, we were getting a more compressed sound.
Yeah.
And then so hearing it like even just through like Spotify, which also does its own form of compression, like I could hear the dynamics so much more than I had before. Especially on like Sunday Bloody Sunday was the one I was just like, I know this song so well, but it just sounds different to my ears.
Yeah, for sure. It doesn't have that, that squashed kind of level limiting that you get from radio.
I was curious, you know, they talked about their tour, like they started small and got bigger as the tour went on. And I was kind of curious to see like what were the size of the venues. I have no frame of reference for like their European tour. Like, I don't know how big Folketeriet in Copenhagen was in 1982, so I don't know like, how big of a thing it was. So I went to the States, where their leg of the United States. Their first show in the United States was in Chapel Hill on this tour at the Keenan Memorial Stadium, which is where the Tar Heels play football.
Okay. Pretty big.
Pretty big. I also, though, wonder if in 83 it was as big as it is now. Because the next venue they play is something called Chrysler Hall in Norfolk, Virginia. Then they played Ritchie Coliseum in University of Maryland. So it's a basketball arena. So like a college basketball arena. That's not huge, especially for like a college park.
Yeah.
And here's the example. Then they played in Auburn at the Cuyahoga County Community College gym. And then then in the Rochester Institute of Technology ice rink. They play Marvel Gymnasium in Providence, Rhode Island, which is a 3,000-seat multi-purpose gym. And then they start doing some theaters. Like, they do Fulton Theater in Pittsburgh, the Orpheum Theater in Boston. They play Trinity College in Hartford, Connecticut, and Wolseley Hall in New Haven. And then they come back. So those were April and beginning of May. They come back to, I'm trying to find it, New Haven in June, and they're playing the New Haven Coliseum. So like 2 months later, they jump from, what was the New Haven one? The Wolseley Hall, which is like part of an auditorium on Yale University.
Mm-hmm. A college theater.
To playing in an arena. And then they played the Centrum in Worcester, which is like a big, and the Atlanta Civic Center. So like, yeah, even in their just between like the beginning of April to the end of June, they like tripled the size of the places they were playing.
Yeah, they're going from like 1,500 to 3,000 seats to Coliseum.
Yeah.
In 2 months.
Yeah. Which had to have been like I bet it was kind of surreal to them. Probably even more noticeable in the U.S. side of things, because like, I don't know, maybe they knew playing the England, the Edinburgh Playhouse, and then moving up to I don't know, the Hammersmith Odeon or the Royal Centre in Nottingham. Like, they may have experienced that growth there, but yeah, it's very interesting.
I don't think you go as big.
Yeah.
In the UK.
Well, I also think
you just end up playing more dates.
Yeah. I think that's more of a thing. And then, but also because like I don't think there's a medium-sized arena. Like, okay, I'd say there's probably 4 tiers in the States. You're like your little clubs, then you're like bigger rooms, and then like your more outside big stuff, and then you're like full-on stadium stuff. In England, I don't know if they've got like that third one. It feels like they go from halls to Wembley.
Yeah.
But yeah, interesting. It's a very interesting period in the band's career and discography. And I don't know. I was happy with listening to this record. Like, I enjoyed it. It kind of changed my tune on them too, a little bit.
Yeah, it didn't make me a fan, but I'm more of an appreciator.
Yeah.
It's definitely it's not a record I'm gonna reach for. I do enjoy the A side. I do think it's consistent and really enjoyable, and I think it was really enjoyable to hear those familiar singles in a new light and in the full context, and maybe with a better quality. Like you mentioned, the compression is not as severe. I was struck though, like, as much as I would say it's a positive thing to associate them with like Echo and the Bunnymen and Susie and the Psychedelic Furs, which is like maybe obvious if like I didn't have the whole like Christian rock association with U2. Those might have been much more obvious comparisons for me to make. I still think like, well, I like when those bands do it better still.
Yeah.
And I don't think that any of the songwriting or any of the particular elements of their sound replaces any of those bands or even really kind of sits fully next to them in my discography. And I do know where they go from here pretty well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I wouldn't say I won't approach those records with more open ears, but
it made me want to listen to more of their records. Like, I definitely want to hear more of their stuff to see, like I know the singles. I'm more curious about the deep cuts and, the lesser known songs than I was before.
I am curious to know what they did immediately following.
Yeah.
Under a Blood Red Sky.
That's a live record.
That's the live record. Yeah.
Which was also part of the explosion too. Like,
yeah.
It's like under Red Rocks is where they perform that, and there's like they used the footage of that to make the music video for Sunday Bloody Sunday, which also had the like Bono waving the white flag, which kind of became like an iconic image. So it's Unforgettable Fire in '84. That's the purple one of the castle, and it's a Brian Eno record. So
which is interesting. It's an Eno Lanois record, but it's also the one with In the Name of Love.
Oh yeah.
Which is the U2 song I never really need to hear.
That may be the most overplayed. Yeah. No, it's not. In the Name of Love's not on there.
Yeah, that's Pride.
Oh, yeah, okay. I didn't know that's what the...
It's the subtitle.
Yeah.
I guess bringing it back, maybe full circle personally for me, it is, well, I think that going back to the political aspects of this record in particular, and then U2 in general going forward, it's statedly political, but a little bit toothless. But it is personally nice to hear such a significant Christian artist push pacifism as strongly as Bono does.
I think he's expressly... Like, I was reading something that's talking about this record, and he was saying that, like, we're not political in the sense that we don't want to argue with what politicians and all these people are doing. Their concern is I think he said something like being human is political. So, like, Bono specifically, his interest in politics is more of the human side of things. And I think that's why U2 has such a big humanitarian focus, is that he doesn't want to get involved in like the political arguing back and forth part. He just literally wants to help people where he can, which there's the whole joke of like, oh, Bono's pretentious and blah blah blah, he's so full of himself and all this stuff. And it's like, I don't know, man, he's done a lot of really good stuff. Like, he's helped a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. He's rich.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. He's a rich guy.
But he doesn't, he does. I do think that the causes that he supports are all pretty good.
Yeah, I was looking at everything that like they've supported, and it's like, it's big stuff. Like, it's Band-Aid, which I think they were actually kind of big. They were part of the Do They Know It's Christmas, and they did Live Aid and World Vision, and what else? He visited Nicaragua and El Salvador for the Sanctuary Movement. They participated in the Stop Sellafield concert with Greenpeace to stop nuclear fuel reprocessing. They helped out with Miss Sarajevo is inspired by the Bosnian War. I'm looking at everything.
Yeah.
They played in Sarajevo.
It's just particularly interesting to me, how environmentalist, how pacifist, he is specifically, the band are in general, and how conservative the average U2 fan that I knew was. It's oh, I get it. You like the personal Jesus stuff.
Yeah.
Not the, this is what I think Jesus requires you to do as a Christian.
Yeah. There is something to be said about so looking at U2's activism and philanthropy, it's almost all entirely centered around performances. So it's very much concerts to raise money and songs to raise money. It's all that kind of stuff. In late 2003, Bono and Edge participated in the South Africa HIV/AIDS awareness series of concerts hosted by Nelson Mandela. They played a Live Aid concert in London with Bob Geldof. They played the Jubilee 2000 with Geldof, Muhammad Ali for the cancellation of third world debt. It's just all their method of being we're helping by playing a giant concert. I guess they're using their tools that they have. That's what they have.
Yeah.
But
I'm assuming they're not getting paid for those performances.
I would hope. Right. Because they don't need it. They're making plenty of money off of their singles and they're just regular touring concerts. So I assume, yeah. It's interesting that it's I'm helping by a concert that I made people pay to come to. I don't know. I don't know. It's interesting, but like I said, they are
Pretty
a band
typical for musicians, though.
They're a band and they just use their music to do something. But yeah, he's a rich guy too, so gotta remember that.
Yeah.
Well, I think I've summed up everything I've had to say about U2 currently. But that'll do it this week. Thank you everyone so much for listening, and head on over to iTunes or Spotify and give us a rating or a review. We need a few new ones. Haven't read any new ones in a while, but that'll do it for this week, and we'll talk to you later.